Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Singularity Lab, your one-stop shop for reliable commentary on breaking stories in science, technology, futurism, and UAP discoveries. It's amazing to have you all today. We've got a lovely show for you. First, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host from the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Luis Jimenez. Luis,
hey, what's going on, Michael? Great to be here.
I'm good. It's great to have you.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, not only one of the smartest women I know, but also my wife, Kristen Mataluni. Welcome, Kristen.
Hello.
Did I embarrass you? What was that?
Well, I feel like we do something like that almost every intro.
Look, I think she's blushing.
Because that's hard for me.
Yeah, I guess when you're see-through, I guess it's not that difficult to see the blushing.
See if I can match the color of my shirt.
Well, it's great to have you, and I hope you guys took the poll today because we've got a pretty awesome show for you. I want to go ahead and welcome those of you joining us. Justin, welcome. Jared, Beartooth 18. I'm curious if that's the number of the tooth or the number of the bear. Mary Kay, Alien Bocafe, it's great to see you. Simon Fly, great to see everyone. And welcome. We've got an amazing show for you today. In our first hour, we're going to be talking to Laurel Coons about genetically modified humans and designer babies. And in the second hour, we'll be joined by Guthrie Dice and Daniel Miller to break down the genomics discussion. And we're going to talk about the Intelligence Authorization Act of fiscal year 2022. So we've got a lot to share with you guys today. Let me introduce our guest, Laurel Coons. Laurel received her PhD from Duke University and postdoc at NIH. She's a researcher and writer on the subject of genomics. I could think of no one better to talk to us about this subject. Laurel Coons, how are you today?
Hi, nice to be here.
It's great to have you. Thank you so much. I know you've had a interesting week getting home. You were on a camping trip for about a month. Is that right?
Yeah, backpacking through the Rocky Mountains and visiting all the national parks over there. So haven't had to think about a lot in the past month. So interesting to be back.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you, and I appreciate you joining us. I know you had some issues when you got home to the house, and the internet was down, and the AC was down. So the fact that you're here means the world to me, and I appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see if we can.
If something falls behind me, just ignore it.
The house is on fire.
Yeah, anything in the background.
Fine here.
It's all good.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, all right. So let's dive right into it. I guess first of all, you studied in genomics. Could you give us a brief kind of breakdown of the difference between genomics and genetics?
Yeah, so genetics is kind of a gene by gene approach. You talk about genetics when you're talking about maybe diseases going from one generation to the next. That's really what you define genetics as. Genomics is kind of looking at the whole entire genome, so all the genes in the genome and how they interact with each other and how, as a whole, our genome is working. So that's kind of how you differentiate is on a single gene versus kind of the complex genome and human behaviors and things like that. That's going to be your more genome things of how everything works together to get the result. Got
it. So does it include I think, pardon me if I get this wrong, epigenetics, that's the interaction between genes and the environment, right? Does epigenetics also factor into genomics?
Yeah, so epigenetics it's definitely under the same category. Genomics is going to encompass everything from where proteins are on the DNA to how the DNA folds up, to how the DNA is read, to what genes are being turned on and on. To how, bases are being modified and epigenetic stuff like that. That's all incorporated. That would all be incorporated under, genomics headline.
Got it. All right. So our topic today is about humanity approaching this really interesting phase, right? Because we've never had the ability, over time, human beings have evolved through adaptations over time. And then we've also used our pretty big brains to come up with some pretty interesting things. For example, the agricultural revolution, we didn't evolve new arms or, new tools out of our bodies to farm foods. We used our brains to get there. Can you kind of tell us, as we start to approach this process, our ability to modify our own DNA, like I guess maybe if you can give us kind of a brief update of like where we are with CRISPR technologies and then where you see this going over the next 20 years.
Okay. So, let's just start with what CRISPR is. So CRISPR is a technology, it's a very old technology in terms of where it came from. It was designed by Mother Nature in the bacteria system. And then we have, in the recent time, have taken it out of the bacterial system and moved it into humans. And now what CRISPR allows us to do is it allows us to, change the DNA of any organism we want. And basically what CRISPR has made things different is the fact that it allows you to go in and pick a specific spot in the genome to change. And that's really where that changes from old, conventional genome technologies and genome editing and things. But basically just talking about CRISPR, again, it's a natural defense system in the bacteria. And what it's doing is it's defending against viruses. So a virus, as we all know with, the coronavirus, is actually, they're very simple. They basically have 3 jobs. They are supposed to look for a host. They're supposed to take over that host. And then they're supposed to multiply and replicate themselves. So it's basically, they have, these very simple jobs to do. And this is what they want to do. So the virus is going to now use the bacteria. It's going to, infect the bacteria, kill the bacteria, or insert itself into the bacteria. And we'll use now the bacteria to replicate itself and multiply itself so it can continue living. And so basically how CRISPR was found is these viruses, they go in and infect the bacteria. And basically they kill off all the bacteria. But there's always a few strains of bacteria that survive. And those are, now your resistant strains to this virus. And when they started sequencing these bacteria that did survive this viral attack, they noticed that the genomes of the bacteria now had little viral sequences in them that came from the virus. So it implemented themselves into the genome. And by having those sequences from the virus in the bacterial genome, the genome is now immune to the viral attacks. So basically what it's doing is it's making it so the bacteria can recognize viruses in the future to protect against them. And so basically what it was doing is it's taking these sequences, and the bacteria makes copies of these sequences that are in the genome, and it gives it to this protein called Cas9. So this CRISPR system is called CRISPR-Cas9. It's Cas9. Yeah. Okay. And so when people talk about CRISPR, they say CRISPR-Cas9. It's the CRISPR plus this Cas9 protein. And basically this protein is let's just call it it's making a sign for the most wanted sequences. So the bacteria has these sequences in them. It gives it to this protein. This protein kind of makes a most wanted sign, if that makes sense. And so now anything that comes in, it's like, I want to see the sequence. If I see the sequence, I'm going to go cut you. So the Cas9 are those molecular scissors that everybody refers to with CRISPR. And it gets a sequence from the bacteria, and then, go ahead.
Sorry, no, not at all. So I was just curious. So you said that, so basically it was because we were watching what viruses were doing. Based on that process, that's how CRISPR was discovered? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So CRISPR has the Cas9 protein in it all. I mean, the bacteria, sorry, it's really been a long month. I haven't had to think much. So the bacteria has the Cas9 protein in it. So basically, the bacteria gives the sequences. The Cas9 makes a cute little sign that says most wanted sequences. So now it's going to be watching for that specific sequence coming in. And anything that comes in, any virus that comes in with that sequence, it's going to cut it. And it's going to debilitate that virus. So that's its defense mechanism against the virus trying to infect the bacteria. So now we have in the last, decade or so, we've taken that system out of the bacterial system and put it into the human systems. So the way you want to think about Cas9 is it's a programmable protein. So it goes into the genome and finds a specific sequence and cuts it. So it can be directed, which is what we were missing in the conventional gene therapies that we've always used, is that we were, delivering genes to patients, but in any random place. Like we had no way of directing it to a certain point in the genome. So with this Cas9 is what is the game changer, is the fact that it can go find a specific sequence that you give it and direct it, and go cut it. And that's what now has made CRISPR, like that's the game changer of, where we are with genomics. It was the fact that it can get into that genome and cut it at a very specific spot.
Wow.
So it sounds like the positives of this are going to be tremendous, because just as long as you can get the sequence of any disease, you could program this part of the Cas9 CRISPR to block it. Am I understanding that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. Is that, basically the possibilities are endless because we can change anything in the genome specific with this technology. I mean, obviously kinks have to be worked out. It's not foolproof. It certainly has issues, but that the idea of it and everything is that you go to a specific spot in the genome, so you can change anything you want. You can cut, you can replace, you can add in, you can deliver new proteins to that section. That's a new thing that I know is going to come out soon, is that you're going to use the CRISPR-Cas9 system not just to cut at a specific spot. You're just going to, go find that sequence and bring something with you, bring a machinery with you, bring a protein with you, and then, use it that way to actually create a little system right there at that spot. It's not just, you don't just have to cut, is what I'm saying.
So are you talking about regrowing limbs kind of thing?
Yeah, well, that's where the questions are going to arise is, we have to understand the genome and what to cut and where to cut and what to change in order to create the certain traits you want. So, growing a limb is going to be a more complex thing. So more complex things are not, in the near future. Right. Single base pair things right now, single mutations, diseases caused by that, sickle cell, the Alzheimer's gene, where you have that late onset, is usually one mutation. Those type of things, that's the here and now, is you can do anything with a single gene approach.
Wow. So do you foresee, and obviously this is maybe a little bit out of your purview, but do you foresee, the next 10 to 20 years having CRISPR modifications to overcome Alzheimer's and things like that?
Yes. I mean, we're already there. They're already treating people with CRISPR. I actually just saw, it was news last year. I didn't see it, but they just made a CRISPR cow out in, I think it was UC Davis. It's called Cosmo the cow, and this was the first embryo. So I think we talked about before the embryo and the germ cells. There's one thing to do CRISPR and change things in cells in our body that are not going to affect future humans. So the here and now is you can change things in any cell you want, other than the sperm cell or the egg cell. Those are your germline cells. And if you change things in those, it's being passed on to your children. You can reproduce them and now put them into the human population. So that's going to be where we have our no, which I can go into a little more later. But in terms of changing things in single cells now, I mean, we're doing that in people. It's happening. The first embryo animal, other than the twin girls that came out of China, I think in 2017 or 2018. Other than those twin girls, which were, I think he made the change inside the embryo, and then inserted it into a human to have those children. So now those children, those changes are in their germline cells. So if they reproduce, you've now put it into the human population. That was your first big no. And I actually think he is. Yeah, he was sentenced in prison 2020, maybe?
Wow.
2019. And I actually read, I didn't know about this either, but I did read recently that there was another one a year later. Like, I think it was 2018 was when he did the two twin girls, supposedly. And then there was another baby born maybe a year later. I was like, and I kind of missed that, or the news didn't, focus on that. But I think he is in prison, because that caused, we can't have people, doing that and putting it in human populations. We are not to that point.
Yeah, no, that's an important distinction. I think a lot of folks are afraid of things like CRISPR because they go, oh, you start editing things in your garage, and then you're going to infect the entire genome, human genome. But you're saying that if it's not embryonic or not in the sperm, then it's not going to be introduced into the general population. That's a really important point. NMUAP, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, how far away are we from CRISPRing diabetes out of the human genome?
That is a popular question you get on this one. I don't know. Diabetes must be the thing. So we don't know. We don't have a genetic basis of how diabetes is. We don't know how the genetic, all the different components involved in either type 1 or type 2 diabetes. Type 1 would be a little bit easier, but until we know, diabetes is still going to be on that list of it's going to be some time.
Okay, thank you for that.
You know what,
Matthew Wright? Go ahead, Luis.
I was going to say,
Matthew Wright, thank you for the $4.99 donation. From one genetics nerd to another, thank you for this show. Thank you, Matthew, for the donation. And then Mr. Jason Land with a $5 donation. How can researchers keep the benefits of this tech affordable for society and out of big pharma? How can researchers keep the benefits of this tech affordable for? Okay, I guess the question is this going to be only available to the rich elite first, and then will we see some sort of trickle down effect on this, or do you think this is going to be democratized through things like CRISPR?
So yeah, that's where I was going to go with it. So what I would like to see, because yes, at the beginning, it's obviously going to be the people who have the access and the means to do it. And so I don't know if you want to say you want like a future where the government is regulating it or making it accessible or free to everybody. But you are going to have to, if people are actually going to do this, which I don't think, the genome and germline cells is going to happen anytime soon. People are going to put a stop to that because I think, as I've told you before, the thing is you have no recall button. Once you enter things in the population, you can't take it back. And, you could destroy our species so fast if you mess up a sequence that you don't know how it works. And trust me, we do not know.
Yeah,
we know
we can't
very
even
little about our
invasive
genome.
species out of the area they're not supposed to be in. So.
Oh, right. With animals, yeah.
So I think in terms of, the future, I think you're going to have it now, doing single cell things in any cell, cancer treatment and things like that. That's the here and now. It's already happening. But I think for the future, if we're actually going to, which I really hope we don't, but if we actually do germline stuff, I don't know.
Well, you're like, the fact that you're so concerned about this gives me significant pause. And so this is something that, Jazz is talking about it in the chat here, but this is like top 5 doomsday scenarios. One would be introducing something very different to the germ level, right? That's what you're so concerned about.
Yeah. And just, my concern also comes from the fact that our understanding of how the genome works, like how that code makes this happen is so limited right now, that I do not think, we should be messing up Mother Nature's very fancy code. And it is, I think I've talked before about that it's very fancy in terms of it has a lot of symmetry within. It's basically one big symmetrical code within itself. Every sequence has the equal amount of sequence in the reverse complement in a single strand. So this is a very nicely symmetrical, programmed, nice code that I don't think we understand. I think we're just starting to understand. And if you start messing with it, we could destroy things very, very quickly. So my thing is, if you want to do it in any cell you want, fine, not the sperm cell, not the egg cell, and not the embryo. Like, you just can't be doing it so it affects future populations, and you are entering these changes into the human population. I think the Chinese guy, what he did was a knockout of, I think, the CCR5 gene, which is basically a gene for a receptor that if you don't have that receptor, if it's gone, you can't get HIV. But the way he did it was so not the way you would do it to be safe. It was like random things, duplicates here. It was just not good.
Sounds like he was doing it out of a garage.
Yeah, well, I think if I remember, it's been a couple of years, but I think he was. I mean, I think he did it. They did it in their lab, and then they just inserted it into a woman. And I think that's how that came about.
Oh my God.
Like all you need are really unethical practices. I mean, there are a lot of very intelligent people who aren't ethical who have access to.
Right.
Yeah, and CRISPR isn't hard because it's just giving it a sequence. CRISPR isn't hard to do at all. So that's where, that's why I think the world did come down pretty hard on him, because it is so easy and they want to be sending a message that this is unacceptable. We're not going to do this.
Right. And are there, do we have our politics here in the US caught up to this yet? Is this something that is currently illegal, or how is this being dealt with on a policy level? Do you know?
Well, I think as a worldwide, it's understood that no one's supposed to be going to germline cells. But in terms of,
like, if somebody was messing with this here in the States, would they go to jail as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So there is policy surrounding it.
Yes.
We'll verify that.
Regulations are always, like I said before, late to the party.
Right.
It sounds like an ethics thing. It sounds like as a doctor, to take an oath as a doctor, you would look at something like this and go, okay, yeah, I can't just do this.
Right.
Like, I think that's sort of, it's like the Hippocratic Oath is the policy, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's, it's understood that this is not supposed to be occurring. And they even have to even do research on embryos and things. There are, very rigorous rules. And if they are allowing it, I think they've gotten some leeway since the last time, I was at the National Academies a couple of years ago, and this discussion was taking place. And I think since then there has, and at that point, I think it was kind of, we're not going to do this. But I think since then, for certain things, you can do certain things. Like, again, in UC Davis, I think, is where they made this Cosmo cow. And basically he was generated by CRISPR in the embryo.
Okay, that's the second time you mentioned this cow, and my small man destroyer of world brain goes, I wonder what that thing tastes like.
So there's the question of why they do it.
That's my first thought is, I want to eat it.
Yeah, and that's
like, that is terrible. Why do I think that?
My first thought was, like, did they give it laser vision or something?
So, well, actually, it's for the eating. Like, that's why they. I mean, the rationale behind why they would get research to do this is they want to, their objective was they want more male cows. They want less female cows, and the reason for that is because the money of cows is beef. And and males have more beef. So if you make, if you have more males, you increase the number of beef and you can have fewer animals. And if you have fewer animals, less greenhouse gases, less methane. I mean, that would be your rationale behind how you could actually do this. And so that, they want, more beef, less cows.
Right.
And basically what they did is they took, so when it's deciding whether you're going to be male or female, XX is female, XY is male. But you don't actually, so it's that Y chromosome that's, telling you you're going to be male. But you don't actually need the whole chromosome. You just need one gene. And from that, there's one gene on it, our Y gene. It is, and it is the thing that it's a gene that once that gene gets activated, it sends you down the male pathway towards male differentiation, in utero. So what they did is, so they don't have to pull over the whole Y chromosome. They just took that gene and they put it on one of the chromosomes, chromosome 17, I think. And what it does though is that then that male, instead of producing half females, half males, like, normally you would, you're still producing biologically, I guess, and, we're debating biologically, but you would still produce half with XX, half with XY. But even with the ones that are XX, because you have that SRY gene on this random chromosome that's also doing, those have the male characteristics. So you started the male. So you basically get males, even though they have the XX, female genotype.
Right.
I've got a quick question, Mike. Is that okay?
Yeah. And then we got,
okay.
go for the question. Then we get a super chat I want to get to, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. Well, on that, because you were talking about how changing the genome in a human and then reinserting it into the population would be probably catastrophic.
Right.
So what happens when you take a cow and you do the exact same thing? Do you destroy all cows now, possibly?
Well, that's okay. So they got their permission to do this. That's why I brought him up. Is that
so they're gonna force veganism through this?
Yeah. So I mean, but you have to regenerate. You put it into that one. I think the initial male is named Cosmo, and then he creates more offspring. So now you put it in his germ cells, it's now going to be passed on, and because it's getting passed on, you would expect the majority of the offspring to have
in that line.
To have male, either be XY or the XX ones to have those male characteristics because that gene was there. So yeah, they have done exactly what we do not want to be doing as humans, so they got permission to do it.
From where do you get permission for something like that?
Super PACs, lobbyists.
Yeah, I would assume they put in a grant and how to go through whatever protocols, which I do not know what they are, to get this approved. I'm sure it was a big approval process, but you would keep those. You can make that as long as you don't insert them into the environment then and let them go free. I mean, obviously they're in a confined area. And
cows get loose, man.
Can you imagine?
My daughter's school is missing a cow right now, actually. They lost one of their FFA cows.
Wow. I just
we're doomed. We're already doomed.
If one of these cows got out, it's and that was
you'd be really low on females. Yeah. There'd be a lot of females missing as they started really getting inserted into the genome. Boy. I think we talked about the flies in Florida that they got permission to mosquitoes and modify that. I mean, there's animals you certainly can get permission within rigorous protocols and things like that.
Well, what do you think? Do you think this is a good idea?
In terms of a scientific understanding and
this idea of messing with the germ cells of animals, do you think because you said it could be catastrophic for humans, why would it not be catastrophic for animals or the environment?
Oh, it could be. I mean, I'm not. I think it's okay. I think it's okay for the scientific purposes, which is what they're doing it for right now. You'd have to go through a lot of, but we do it with plants. You just have to go through a lot of testing and verification and things. Very small baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yeah, that's yeah. But I think, and again, I'm cool. Less plants, animals are less than humans. But if you disrupt our environment and you start disrupting our delicate balance between species and things, things can go wrong.
Right.
Hey man, trees talk to each other.
Yeah, Stefan wants to know, since we cannot yet identify what causes autism, does that mean that Crispring would not work against this condition, or have we identify the genes enough? I think he's asking if we've identified the genes associated with autism and if CRISPR can be.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we do not know the genes, and we don't even have we have our diagnostic criteria for autism is very subjective even right now. So we certainly don't know what genes are involved in making it happen. And so yeah, no.
So Laurel, is the thing that's holding back us cracking the genome computing power?
Don't get me started on this. My personal opinion is. Yes. I think, and it's also not just the computing power, it's also not having the data of all the human, we need samples and we need lots of computer power. I was very limited I wasn't limited, but my last papers are very big. I tested servers to the max, run every single sample that's ever been published. Let's understand it, let's do it. So people like me could certainly benefit from having more computing power. The reason I haven't looked at the new genome yet that just came out, that new, supposed full genome, is I don't have the computing power right now.
Oh, wow.
To be able to, not on my own computer, to be able to, look at it in detail.
Chris Plain wants to know, does epigenetics blur the germ line to some degree? Won't changes to the parent pass on at least passively to the offspring, even if not directly through genetics?
Epigenetics. When you create a sperm and egg come together and you create a embryo, a lot is wiped clean. A lot of the slate is wiped clean, but obviously it is not all wiped clean, and it's the epigenetics that kind of starts the process. Because if you just give something a DNA strand, you have to start the process of it becoming 1 cell to 2 cells to 4 cells. Right. And that there's epigenetics that drive that. But a lot of it is wiped clean. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question fully.
Yeah, no, I think you have. Man, like I thought I was going to feel better about after talking to you that we were not on a doom path, but I'm really nervous now because it does seem like, and there's this whole argument, and we don't have to get too deep into this, but there's this whole argument about how people who are against GMOs, genetically modified organisms in foods, and I know this is not your expertise, so don't feel like you have to know an answer to this, but I just wanted to bring it up for our listeners, is that, when it comes to GMOs, a lot of people who are against it are people who have plenty to eat, plenty to drink, plenty of, they have shelter, but people who could benefit from GMOs are people who have a lot less. So there's this interesting, line between people who are against GMOs and people who are for it, for the rest of the world who's trying to come out of poverty. I guess I'll table this for anybody on the panel and to folks who are listening. But are you pro GMO when it comes to supporting emerging humans? Anyone?
Oh, well, okay. So
I've never had a hot take on GMOs. Thank you, Michael, for making me think of that.
I didn't realize how much of a hot topic it was until the last time I did a podcast here. And it was like, that's what people were looking at. We've done GMOs for a long time. That's why I was like, yeah, it's not new. And I mean, even before, the CRISPR aspect is new, but even before that, farmers have always, cross breed things the way for genetic traits. We do it in dogs. This is, the old fashioned way. You take this and this and you breed this to make this. So that's been done for a long time. GMOs are certainly not new. The CRISPR aspect is newer. And so that's where, regulations are coming into place of whether do they have to go under the rigorous testing before they can put it into human bodies. And that's where I think Europe and the United States are at different places right now. On determining what the rules are for CRISPR, because CRISPR is not natural. Whereas before you did have to take something and breed it with something else. So it's still kind of a natural process, even if you're selecting for it. Whereas CRISPR is you can just make the changes. The problem is you may not be able to track those changes to see that they actually use CRISPR. That's kind of where Europe and the United States, I think, are defining their terms on terms of what they have to regulate is whether, it has a CRISPR footprint and can you track it type of thing.
Wow.
And I had mentioned that the woman that I was listening to the other day, who is one of the leaders in the field of the anti-GMO movement, she was making a point about how most of the people in the movement aren't really concerned about what the plants do when people eat them. They're more concerned about how the plants grow naturally and how creating plants that need this fertilizer and can take over this crop and the problem that it's causing in that arena is what they're really focused on right now.
And that's fair. That's the same way as, we don't, when I say like those mosquitoes that are, were modified and things like that, don't enter them into the population. Because again, our species balance between all of our species is a very delicate balance. If you start knocking off one species, that could have impacts on everything that depends on that species. And so that's where, I understand that argument. And it's not a bad one.
I'm still.
It's kind of one of those things being like it's been happening for so long that But yeah, no, the argument isn't invalid. I think that's you don't want invasive species taking over things and things like that. Like I think that's it's an important and valid point.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit more about CRISPR because I wanted to dig into this. Like I guess what I don't understand is the process by which CRISPR works. You explained it beautifully, but like, how do you program it to go in and cut the right gene? Like how does that work? Or
That's a good question.
I just don't get it.
So normally it's the bacteria, bacteria giving it to Cas9 gives the sequence to go look for. So now all we're going to do is we're going to take over that thing and we're going to give it a guide RNA. I think that's what they call it.
A guide RNA.
And so we're going to make the sequence, which, you can just order the sequence that we wanted to go find. And then you'll get a tube of basically Cas9 in one tube, and
Amazon.
It's going to be Amazon.
Is it Prime? Is it Prime?
it basically is just not from Amazon, but I have a feeling like this is not far. But basically, most companies you can just order this stuff from. But a tube of the guide RNA of what sequence you want to get, and then a tube of the Cas9. And that's basically the two main ingredients you need. So, but we give it the sequence, and we give it the Cas9. So we're entering that new protein into humans, which is, naturally in bacteria. The sequence, then the Cas9 finds that sequence, then goes and cuts it. And basically, now that you've cut your DNA, our DNA gets cut all the time, take an X-ray, you're going to have cut DNA. And so our cells, though, have the machinery to fix that. And basically, we have two strands of DNA, in each cell. And so the cuts thing basically, looks at the other strand and says, hey, I need my sequence back. Like, let me copy it from you. And as a template to copy mine back into it. And that's how it fixes itself. So all we do is then give a template. If we want to change the sequence, you give a template DNA for it to attach to copy from as the instructions to then copy that strand down. So you get the guide RNA, you go cut it with your Cas9, and then you provide, if you want to actually change or insert in things, you provide a template DNA for it to now, when it fixes itself in our natural process, because our cells fix ourselves all the time, our DNA is getting cut all the time. It uses that as a template, and it will reinsert that sequence in instead of the one from the other DNA strand that's there. So that's basically how it does it.
It's amazing. All right, so we've got a $50 donation from Jazz Shaw. Jazz! Thank you so much, brother. I'm going to get to your question in 1 second. Quickly, I'm going to reset the room. For those of you who just joined us, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Help us get this show out there. We also have the opportunity for you to do a super chat if you want to donate to the show. And we've got the Patreon down below in this description if you want to be a monthly donor. This is a public access channel. We're here because we have the passion and the love for it, but we could sustain it the more you can help. For those of you, again, just joining us, we've got an amazing guest here today. We're so happy to have Laurel Coons with us. Laurel received her PhD from Duke University and postdoc at NIH. She's a researcher and writer on the subject of genomics. So let's get to Jazz's $50 donation. Thank you so much, Jazz. Jazz wants to know, is there such thing as junk DNA, or is it just DNA we have no clue yet about? Should we be messing with this?
Okay, so the junk DNA. One of our finer moments in science. I literally look back and I'm like,
I gotta say, I love when we make Laurel go, when we make her blush, about these questions. When she's like, I feel like the geek is just oozing out of her, and I love it. So I
just can't believe that we would have the audacity to be like, oh, it's just junk DNA right after we sequence the DNA. Anyway, no.
The hubris. The hubris.
I look back and I'm like, we did what? And this is when I was still young. Like I was, in college when this was all happening. But that extra DNA. I mean, so protein coding regions are 1%, give or take. And the rest of that DNA is the instructions for how to do things, right. How you turn off and on genes. I mean, that was what my, one of my later papers was about, is actually knowing what sequences are actually turning on and turning genes on and off. Like, can we go in and identify this sequence does this sequence does this? And basically what I was able to show is, what sequences were resulting in functionality, which ones were not, and how a transcription factor, which is a protein that turns on genes, it's a protein that comes in, it binds somewhere, and a gene, 6 blocks down the road turns on. And so we don't know that process yet of, something coming in, touching the DNA, and then a gene way far away turning on. And so, but all that junk DNA is where those instructions are, that how genes turn on, how long they stay on, and how they, connect with each other. That's all of that. So no, we don't have junk DNA.
I love how you say that too. You're like, no, we don't have junk DNA. Like this is fascinating. The fact that because we didn't understand what it was when we discovered it, we just assumed it was junk. Like that's mind-boggling to me.
Hey, Mike, this is a pretty good
idiopathic.
question.
It's idiopathic. Curious George says, and we've got another super chat that I'm gonna get to in a second. Just hang tight, and it's so we're gonna get to Curious George. If you injected CRISPR, would the cells change the next time they are replaced? That would take months for some cell types. If you injected
yeah. So yeah. Thinking all the exceptions.
All the possibilities.
Yeah, this is great. That's a good question. That's what I was like.
Yes, if they're replicating from the similar cells.
But there's variables. I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's variables.
I'm guessing it's mostly yes, but there's some variables.
God, Michael, God's the variable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yes, in general, it should go into the ones it's replaced by, because you wouldn't be CRISPRing every single. I mean, our cells, our skin cells are being replaced all the time.
Right.
So yes, easy answer.
Yes is the easy answer. Got it. Kristen, you want to say his name because he loves your accent?
Jean-François Charlevoix.
Jean-François Charlevoix.
It's not that good.
Jean-François Charlevoix asks, just because I love Kristen's accent. Oh, and also thank you guys for taking on this important subject and making it accessible. Well, all the thanks goes to Laurel, who's joining us today. So thank you so much, Laurel, for being with us. All right, so question. Let's get into designer babies. Let's get into this idea. Okay, so you said that it's not a good idea to change anything in the germ cells, right? That would potentially, get into the general population. So how would one go about choosing the characteristics and traits of a child if they had the ability? Like, what is CRISPR currently capable of that? Why do we not see this more widespread now? Like, where are we at with this?
So, okay. So the designer babies. So CRISPR can do anything you want it to do. So in that aspect, we certainly have the technology. But what people are looking for generally, everybody, one thing is that if you ask different people what their desirable traits are, for, a coach, it's going to be one thing versus, maybe a trophy wife's going to have a different opinion. What traits?
I was thinking about first two examples.
Well, or, scientists would have another. But like, if you ask, like, if I just thought about that because I was thinking physical traits. They would be the ones that are more looking for, blonde hair, blue eyes, which James is going to be looking for. He's going to want height and athletic ability, whereas, a scientist or, a Nobel Prize winner or something, they're going to want, things that are supposedly make you more intelligent.
Right.
So that's going to everybody. What your desirable traits are always going to be different between different opinions. But like if we talk about high intelligence, which is people tend to like about that one, we have really we have no idea how to design intelligence at this point.
Okay, so we don't have when it comes to the.
In the future, obviously.
We lost you there for a second, Laurel. You mentioned intelligence, and you were saying we don't specifically know the genes associated with intelligence. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah. I mean, right now, where we know single gene mutations and things like that for specific diseases, but we are not, sickle cell and things like that. But we are not to a place where we know complex things like, intelligence. That's going to be, you're going to be changing. That's going to be a whole slew of genes involved in that. And so you would almost have to, change a whole bunch of them. But first you have to understand how they are talking to each other, who's contributing what, how it's working together. So in that aspect, we're a long way from doing that. The one thing, though, that I thought about today is that, the technology is here, and technology in itself is not a bad or good thing. It's how we use the technology, but it is advancing quickly in terms of where CRISPR was 5 years ago and where it is now. So like the time to be talking about these issues of what you can do, what you're allowed to do, how far you can go, is now, because there's an old saying that you don't realize you're in a revolution until the revolution is already happening. And because this is such a slow process in terms of, you just build on it every single day. So in that aspect, it's advancing quickly, but it's always a step-by-step build on what you knew from the day before. But you don't actually know that it's like a disruptive process until you kind of look backwards. So it's like, we don't want to get too far down this line without having these discussions before realizing how bad it is and then trying to backtrack.
Right.
And so I think and I totally lost what the original question was, but I think that that's an important, ethical thing about, these discussions that need to be happening now, as opposed to waiting until it's too late.
I appreciate that. And that's exactly what we're trying. That's what our goal is to do with this show, is to talk about these ideas, these emerging technologies, and figure out what are the ethics, how do we operate so that we don't lose ourselves, we don't lose our humanity, we don't lose our planet in the process. So we have to find ways
just
to
knock out our species. Easy.
Right.
Found a cure for the coronavirus. Just take out the whole species.
Right. Exactly. At what cost? Right. So we have to be incredibly careful in our ethical pursuit of these technologies. I've got a super chat I'm gonna get to in a second.
I think the way I would probably phrase it if I had to is where are we going to draw the line between helping with a debilitating disease, which is needed here now and is being used, versus making the perfect kid, quote unquote. Right. Where is that line going to be drawn? Who's going to draw it? And who's going to watch it? That's kind of because we're obviously here, so it's going. Now we need to talk about how far we're going to let it go, and where is that line going to be drawn? Because you don't want it to be drawn, and people are going to say, like, don't draw your ethical line in front of the disease I have. So you want to be where are we going to make that? Where are we going to draw the difference between we're allowed to do this, we're going to change this for this, we're not going to do this?
Well, it seems to me like what you said, what you taught us makes it very clear, right? Is you draw the line at the germ cell, right? Do anything else you want, but draw the line at the germ cell. Am I missing something?
Well, go ahead.
Certain disabilities and those sorts of things, some things that some communities consider disabilities and some communities consider to not be disabilities, like the argument about hearing and implants and, or, some people believe that, different conditions when babies are born that way, that we should prevent them being born that way. But some people think that that's part of who they are. So it gets very nuanced.
Right.
Yeah. So, your next questions on the, ethical thing is going to be, when you have a baby, you do your full genome sequencing when they're in embryo, and you see that they have a debilitating disease, or they have a trait that's going to give them cancer maybe 40 years down the line or something like that. That's where your more ethical things where I'm like, don't play with the germ line. Right. You are going to have to answer the questions of, I see that my baby's going to have this issue. Can you change it now? Right. And so that's going to be more, and that's going to be more. That's what the Chinese doctor was, attempting to do, but that's where the questions are going to be. That's where we don't have the answers to what we're going to allow and what we're not going to allow. But that's going to be your immediate. Issues.
I could almost see this playing out. I'm sure they're working on a Black Mirror episode about it. When you do a sequence on the unborn child, you find out there's something wrong, and the parent says, "No, this is my child. We're going to go." And then they, then they're getting litigation. They're getting court action saying you're an abusive parent because you're not dealing with this specific disease that you found before and you could cure. Like the ethical implications are just immense. But quickly though, I do want to ask you, are there any very specific traits or genes that, like, okay, blue, brown hair, blue eyes, how tall you're going to be, how strong you're going to be, how much testosterone you produce, how much estrogen you produce? Are these things that can be manipulated now?
Off the top of my head, because I did estrogen research, I can come up with a very quick way to change testosterone and estrogen very quickly.
I'm just curious if there are like specific traits that we can change now, or if this is something that we're still a ways away from.
Any trait that's driven by a single gene, you can change now. Off the top of my head, let's see. I know there's a trait that I think it's DEC2, I think, is a gene, and basically people who have a mutation in this specific spot in this gene, they can survive off of 4 hours of sleep, and they are fully functional.
I want that one.
That would be one.
Can you do one where I no longer crave sugar?
Well, cravings are probably a little more complicated. I do know another one that I've thought about, and I think I've even posted on Twitter about it, is there's people who don't feel pain, and it's usually some of them we found are specific mutations and specific genes. The pain one, I think, is SCN9A, and that one, if a specific gene and specific mutation in that gene, those people feel absolutely no pain. And basically, I think it's a protein that is supposed to take the pain signal from like your fingertips and move it to your brain, and tell you that pain there. That transmission is not occurring, so those people don't feel pain. So like this could be used in great ways with people with terminal cancer, and they're in a lot of pain. That would be a way to use that, to help somebody. But at the same time, do we want to be, we allow it for them, but do we want to be having other people who just don't feel pain? Because if you don't feel pain, you don't know when things have gone wrong.
I think danger, yeah.
Yeah, I think one kid, maybe Africa, he had a mutation in a certain gene and he couldn't feel pain, and he ended up dying at 14 years old because he jumped off a building because he was going to be, selling it for television, because you wouldn't feel that pain. Another, you can have your hand on an iron and you wouldn't know because you don't feel any pain. So, you have good reasons to use it. Use it for cancer patients who, terminal, anything to get them out of pain, and it would be amazing. But at the same time, where do you draw that line? Do you allow it for other things?
Right.
Like a boxer's.
Oh, that would be horrifying. Could you imagine how horrifying that would be if like you had UFC fighters who had this gene taken out of them so they could just fight each other till they're bloody pulps? Like,
and this is not taking out the whole gene. This is easy. This is easy to do. This is one single base pair change. Like that's all it is. Wow. So this is here now. We can do it right now. That's where. I mean, that's an easy one. We like things that are only single base pairs.
Laurel, have you been? Somebody brought it up in the chat, and I actually had pulled up the summary of this film earlier. But have you ever seen that movie Gattaca with Ethan Hawke?
Oh, yeah. Well, I saw it years ago, but the one scene where he's deciding the babies is kind of one that's played over and over again that I remember.
Wait, what is it?
It's the one scene in there where the guy the doctor had taken. He said, I took the liberty of taking all these diseases and everything out of your child's genome for you. And then the parents sat there and said, I think we were just trying to protect against this. I don't think we were wanting to disrupt.
Yeah, that's like the opening.
Everything.
Oh, the opening of the movie, I think, is what you're talking about. It's that. So basically, Michael, you haven't seen this, have you? Okay, because this is right up your alley. So it takes place in the future, and it's about this guy, Vincent Freeman, who's played by Ethan Hawke, and he's always fantasized about going into outer space. But he's grounded by his status as a genetically inferior invalid. So he was born right before this genome sequencing boom, and now he's part of this society that never got
the lessers,
the cancer-free, perfect bodies,
right?
Like just the cream of human evolution,
ingenuity, right?
And but he also, and like at this point in the movie, we're going to space every 10 seconds, so he wants to be an astronaut, but because of his genetics, they won't let him do it. So he goes and he gets genomes from one of these people who were born into this system. And the reason why this guy is agreeing to this is because he got into a terrible accident and was paralyzed, but his genomes are still good. It's like you can't do the math for accidents. Like you can't take that out. You can't take fate out. And so that's what the movie's all about. It is awesome.
I'll have
And
to check it out.
he gets the space, like he basically takes this guy's identity, he takes his DNA, because every part of this space program is checked by fingerprints, blood. They do checks on you, so like he's got to have his blood, essentially his genes.
Wow.
So yeah, dude, you would dig this flick. It's really cool.
I'll check it. We've got a super chat here from Neurostream. Thank you so much for the donation. Can I find out if I was a CRISPR baby, do consumer genome sequencing vendors like 23andMe or Ancestry plan to profile case 9 mods in the population? Wow, what a question.
Yeah, that's loaded. That's
yeah. I mean, I know this is not your expertise, Laurel, but do you have any insight on this?
Well, if you want to find out, I can assure you we're not a CRISPR baby. But if you want to find out, take your parents' DNA and your DNA, sequence it, then you'll be able to tell. I mean, there's
so
only
they would be so 100 years from now, 23andMe, you send them your DNA, and they'll be able to be like, "Yep, you were CRISPR'd."
Maybe, but those companies, remember, like
you were CRISPR'd.
You were CRISPR'd.
They can't identify anything about Mike's sister because she's had a bone marrow transplant. It just comes back inconclusive. We have no idea.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah,
that is interesting.
So she's got a brand new blood type, brand new bone marrow. So they can't follow her genetics back.
Oh, well, they can. I mean, there's other. You don't use the blood as the source, then, but you could, just use something else for the DNA source. That could be worked around. I think. What do you do? Spit into something for 23andMe? Yeah, you could find out.
There are other methods.
There would be other methods to find. I mean, remember, 23andMe and Ancestry are only looking at. At least they're only analyzing for your for you, like this. I think 600,000 variants that are known to be different in people, and they're using that to find your ancestry or associate it with certain traits and things like that. Which I will say, I was playing on Ancestry yesterday. Their DNA has gotten tremendously better. My family tree has 9,000 people on it now, and I've verified about 500 of the DNAs that are accurate with it. So Ancestry is certainly improving in that aspect.
They're introducing new things too. I can't remember what was the one I read the other day, but they can look at other stuff in your system.
Yeah, I saw that you could pay to have them to tell you a little bit more about your traits, which is basically what 23andMe is going to be doing. What I use Ancestry for is their through lines with the DNA. So they're not going to let you necessarily see the DNA of other people unless they share it with you. But they are doing a very good job of making all this data that they have fit together, so you can see many generations back. And I just happened to be playing on it yesterday, and it was vastly improved since I had played on it previously.
I got a question about 23andMe. I've heard that it's in your opinion, do you think it's something, is it something that you would encourage people to do because it helps sort of break down this genome system? Because I've also heard that these companies can sell your information to insurance companies, and then they can deny you based off of your traits and your family history, certain types of coverage or medicines or so on and so forth.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of questions. Again, regulations in Congress, late to the party. But I think I certainly did 23andMe and Ancestry, but my opinion is that before you're going to discriminate against me based on your DNA, you're going to have to know more about it than I do. So that was my kind of, okay, we'll do this.
That's fair. I mean, I feel like you got a leg up on everybody there. I really want to do it. Can I send my DNA to you? You can just keep it.
Well, it's funny, and I'll change the subject, but I'll bounce back real quick. But it's interesting, though, that we have all these things, and we're talking about CRISPR babies and everything. But I know I have a friend who they really need to have their genome fully sequenced to look for something. And we can't, it's like the insurance does not cover any type of genoming stuff unless you have cancer already. And I'm just serious, like I'm going to have to now go to a separate company and do it separately, because I mean, are we that far behind that people can't even get their genome sequenced for something that has a medical necessity? But bouncing back, that's just, it's weird that we're talking about all this and doing CRISPR and all these fancy things, but then we talk about like on the here and now for patients today, try getting insurance to cover your genome testing. But for 23andMe and Ancestry, so A lot of people, for privacy things. The problem is that, once we have your third cousin, it really doesn't matter if we have your specific DNA because we're going to be able to find you regardless, because there's so many. So the big protections have to be that these companies, 23andMe and Ancestry, do not, really protect their clients in terms of I don't think it's fair that, police necessarily have access to these direct databases that then they're coming down 50 years later and charging people with crimes, which is happening all the time. They're in the newspaper all the time that this is happening. Those two particular companies are, I think they have done a good job at pretty much regulating it. However, if a court overturns it, which I did see, I think Ancestry, but I'll have to double check that. But I think, a court ruled that they had to give it, and they did give it.
Wow.
But some of these lesser ones that are, not as, secure, those are very dangerous. That's where they found that, Golden Gate Killer. They found it through one of those, online DNA things that people just upload their data to. And that's how they were, they had their, third cousin over or something, but that's easy then to find who that person is just based on that. So we have a big problem in terms of privacy. We don't need discrimination. You don't want the military saying you can't be part of, the military if you have certain variants. You don't want kids not being able to go to college because they have certain mutations. The military, I know a couple years ago, at least put out a bulletin, do not do the 23andMe or Ancestry. I'm not sure if they've updated their opinion on that.
They were telling people within the military not to do it?
Yeah, because you have to give your records to the military when you are part of it, and that includes all your health records. So you would have to give over your genome stuff. I mean, that was kind of the rationale behind telling people not to do that, is because you'd have to give it to us and then we can use it. And so don't do it. And now we're talking a couple of years now, so it could be quite different at this point. And it's not our generation that's going to be impacted by it. It's going to be the lower generations, our kids and everything. That's where I would be more mindful, because they're going to be the ones that experience the discrimination, which is going to happen. There's absolutely, like you said, there's Facebook groups where you have like a BRCA mutation and you have cancer, and insurance companies are going through those groups and finding you and saying, we're not going to give you insurance. That has definitely happened. And so, rules, regulations would be nice to have, but again, it's always the second step in everything. I think for an informative thing, I like 23andMe. I like Ancestry for what they offer. If your rationale is that you're trying to protect your own privacy, unfortunately, we don't need your DNA to find out who you are. We just need surrounding areas far away. So it's everybody who's thinking they're protecting themselves by not having it,
Not as much as you might think you are.
Bad news, Uncle.
But again, those companies are supposed to be, and I think they've done a pretty good job of really, making sure that this is not being used by other people, that it's staying within their company walls.
Right. All right. So we had a poll at the beginning of this show. You want to share our poll with our listeners, Artemis?
Hi. Sorry, I didn't realize I was live.
Yes, you are live.
Sorry. Awkward. Anyway. I'd love to. Okay, if you could design one of your child's traits, what would it be? Intelligence, 27%. Health, 37%. Beauty, 6%. And 30% said, I just want them to fly, bitch.
That's awesome.
So the one that people
agree with that. I think flying is the way to go.
So the ones that
why not?
The one, I think 6% was for beauty. That's probably the one out of all of those that we're closest to, because eye color, and that's the one that people least want. But that's probably the one. I mean, eye color and things are pretty straightforward. Those changes could be made easily. Flying is going to require some. You're going to need some wings and things, some aerodynamic changes. That's going to require lots of gene changes.
Intelligence start working.
You got a lot of work to do, Laurel.
Yeah,
I would start with a bird. I would start with a bird and try to insert the human into it instead of trying to make the human
do
it the other way around.
Actually
something that does fly and try to make him do something that we could, attempt
like
to actually do.
And there goes the FBI knocking on Laurel's door, asking for all of her degrees.
I know we've hit our hour mark, Laurel. I have a question here I want to pose to you from UFO Blueprint. This is something that we've got quite of a quite a response from folks who follow the UFO and UAP phenomena, and they have a question for you. Can you conclude for sure that the whole Mirageman story that the UFO people still believe is false? Aliens didn't change DNA from caveman or primates to now. Don't waste this guess. Already answered. Is it possible that our DNA has been tampered with by extraterrestrials? Is the question.
Ooh.
I have no.
Is that even something you could know? Is that even something you could know?
I mean, I think, I mean, our DNA can be changed by the environment. So I guess, in some outside realm, in theory,
I think everybody's sort of a thing that they hang that on is that the human brain and human evolution was so quick compared to everything else around it, and really compared to anything else ever recorded. Is that an incorrect statement? Because we're still looking for this missing link between this huge jump in evolution, right?
I don't know if it's a huge. I mean, I don't know what these theories are, but I don't think it's a huge jump. I mean, we know our evolutionary track of where we came from, gorillas and things like that, and basically just stood up. The thinking capabilities were kind of there. Whales and things like that. These are very bright, smart animals. So our brain capability was certainly already there that we evolved from. Big thing was standing up on two legs as opposed to four was the big change. Right. And if anybody who has lower back problems realizes that we still need to evolve that lower part of that spinal cord a little bit better, because everybody always has these lower back problems as they get older. Right. But I think we have to prove that there's other life forms, and then that they changed our DNA. I think
let me ask you this: if you couldn't prove another life form, if you had the time and the budget and just the interest, do you think looking into the genome, if you had the computing power as well, would you be able to determine 100% for sure if that's the case?
If you could track where everything in our genome came from, that would basically tell you that that's not the case. So you would have to, be going back to, I mean, they're finding fossils of humans from the very beginning of time with DNA in them. You would be comparing that and kind of going across the species and kind of seeing if you can track where everything came from. That would be how you address that question.
Fair. Okay.
I mean, I certainly don't think you can say,
you can find. Yeah. No, I'm saying you can find out. I'm saying I don't want an answer, yes or no. I just wondering if you had the capability, would we be able to determine it? And it sounds like we definitely would be able to, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, well, and I think it probably could be addressed now. We have a lot of organisms. I think we'll be able to find our evolutionary track. The things is our you can, a lot of our genome is just duplications from other animals where genes get duplicated and turned around and things like that. That's kind of how things evolved. So you can find like the same genome just in different spots. That's a lot of how it changes. So that would be how you kind of address that. But obviously the environment does play a role, can affect DNA in certain things. So that would be where I kind of frame that question if I wanted to humor it.
I think that'll satisfy a lot of people out there.
Laurel, what a pleasure it's having you. It was having you. I know you've got a lot going on with your house. You're trying to get that book under control, so I don't want to steal all your time. So, can you tell people where they can find you if they want to follow you on social media? If they want to see what you're up to, you have a great Twitter account that I love to follow. You want to share with folks where they can find you?
Yeah, I actually haven't been on Twitter in about a month, but I will be getting back to there soon. Laurel Coons, LAURELCOONS is my handle. I'm also on every social media platform basically. Or just Google my name.
I'm gonna go ahead and put her Twitter handle in the chat as well.
Amazing. Laurel, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. We've got her Twitter handle here in the chat as well. So you make sure you go over there to Twitter and follow her. Super fun to have you. Amazing. I'd love to have you back again sometime. I feel like we barely scratched the surface of this topic. I feel like every time we bring you on, we like barely scratch the surface, but it was just an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Have a great one, Laurel. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ooh.
There we go.
Wow, she's amazing. I just love having her on the show. I had her on the debrief a while back, and yeah, it's just an amazing lady.
She's good. She's real good.
She's real good. All right, so we've got an amazing second hour for you guys. We're going to be talking about quite a few things, actually. One is the intelligence authorization for fiscal year 2022. We touched on this last night. We've got a couple great guests for you. We've got Guthrie Dice and Daniel Miller joining us right now. Guthrie is an Australian PhD. He's joining us from the future. As well, student studying spatial attention in mice at the Australian National University. He's written for Naked Scientist about psychedelic therapy for depression and an avid UAP researcher. Welcome, Guthrie. How are you?
Hey, Michael. Can everyone hear me?
Yep. We can hear you great.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm well.
Good. It's great to have you. We appreciate you being with us. We've also got Daniel Miller joining us. He's an LA-based actor, a lover of all things space and science. His curiosity has now led him to the UAP topic, whereas a political junkie, he focused on the movement and efforts within the United States government and scientific community. Welcome, Daniel.
Hello. Thanks for having me again. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's great to see you all. What a good looking bunch we got here today, I tell you.
Well, it's just the suave Australian just walked in, and now and Daniel's always in here, making me swoon. I feel a little inadequate. I'm feeling a little inadequate, is what I'm saying.
You should not, my friend. You should not. All right, so let's start with Guthrie, because I know you Guthrie recently reached out to me and really got me aware of the intelligence authorization. Why don't maybe you could start, Guthrie, and tell us a little bit about like how you got into this topic and why it interests you, and what about the UAP topic has got you inspired?
Sure. So I think I first probably heard about the UAP topic in 2019. Someone that I hadn't seen in a while brought up the topic to me, showed me some of the videos, Go Fast and the FLIR one. And at the time, I think I had a pretty dismissive attitude towards it. I sort of thought, oh, that can be anything. And, I don't have any context, and really sort of an it can't be, therefore it isn't response. And then a couple of years later, another friend of mine sent me a CNN interview with Chris Mellon and Sean Cahill. And I thought, this is a bit odd. There are these, people in apparent positions of credibility and responsibility and authority saying pretty incredible things. And so I started digging into it. And, that list of apparently credible people has just grown since I've done that. And the more I've looked into it, the less I've felt as though I can dismiss it. So I'm still looking into it. Read a few books: Hastings, UFOs and Nukes, Ruppelt's report on unidentified flying objects, Hynek's UFO experience, and I'm trying to work my way through the Condon report at the moment, because I feel like it's got to get both sides of the story. And then I've got some more things to read afterwards, but. I guess this is
not, from, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from my understanding, here in the US, within the past couple of years, this topic has become much more mainstream. Is that so in Australia, or is it still super fringy?
I think it's still pretty fringe. So, I definitely have the feeling that I've got to come at
Cover your face
as dispassionately as I possibly can. And
well, to be fair, though, the Australian media, I think Ross Coulthart has probably produced the best news piece that was an hour long by far better than anything that I've ever seen done in American media or any media for that matter. It's an hour-long special I recommend everyone go see. And he's going to be on the show tomorrow. I'm not plugging him, but I'm just saying like that came from Australia.
Yeah, look, I think Ross has really kind of jumped onto the stage and hit a 6 as far as this conversation goes. To use a cricket metaphor.
Did you see us all just look up and it just went flying over our heads?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even play cricket, but just this certain amount of cultural osmosis that you can't help.
I was just trying to figure out in my brain, can I make a cricket noise?
Does it sound like dolphin?
I was thinking of the animals too.
Kind of the same.
That'll work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully the sort of, I don't know, is there a baseball equivalent? You know, home run.
A home run. There you go.
There you
Yes.
go.
What was it? What was the cricket? What is the cricket?
Hit a 6. So
Hit a
that's
6. Okay.
sort of the equivalent.
Silly
Equivalent of the home run.
foreign sport.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think Ross has really gotten the conversation going a little in Australia, but I think you guys have a few years head start on the Australian conversation. So it's still getting going from my point of view, and obviously I'm in a bit of a cloistered environment in academia, so there's an extra bit of conservatism when it comes to probably the UAP discussion, and so perhaps I've got a bit of a biased view, but certainly in academia, it's still stigmatized.
Got it. Okay, so you brought this to my attention a couple of days ago. The Debrief did an article on the intelligence authorization for fiscal year 2022. We were talking about this last night on UCR as well, and the question that was brought up was, will this make it into the final bill? But let's talk about, before we talk about that, can you guys kind of, Daniel, have you been researching this topic? I saw that you've been sharing some stuff with it. Can you kind of share with us, maybe bring us up to date on exactly what's going on with this?
Yeah. So basically, last year, when the news broke that there was going to be a UAP task force and that the report was going to be given 180 days within signing, that was the 2021 Intel Authorization Act, which is kind of their fiscal year, how they're going to spend their money for the intelligence communities. And it was the Senate version. Then there's going to be a House version, and they figure out, they mix the two, and that's what gets signed. This is the 2022 Senate version. So their draft that got passed has some language in it for UAPs that I found amazing. Especially for all you big phone home folks. I mean, this is some really, really big home run stuff, or 6, or whatever it was before.
Hit 6.
Yeah, hit a 6. Now, I my memory is probably not going to be perfect on this, but basically the Senate is making it very clear that they are going to keep their foot on the pedal on this topic, and they want more information within 90 days of it passing, as well as any incidents regarding UAP that were before those 90 days. And actually, Guthrie and I had an interesting conversation about what maybe that could mean and how that could be perceived. And then also to continue getting a report quarterly, and to get all of that information. And then separately from that is the whole conversation about what this entity after that's going to succeed the UAPTF will be. And that's kind of hinted at in that bill as well. Good stuff.
Do we have any idea what this is going to cost? I think the conversation we were having last night and the big pushback we got in the Chatterverse was that this isn't going to pass because it's just going to cost too much, and Biden's going to send it back and have them nix this part. Does either of you guys know what the cost is going to be and what your thoughts are on that?
No clue yet, but I think it will be passed. I think the entire reason of this UAP report that came out was to justify that cost. I think this is from the get-go what the Senate wanted, but they know they could never get taxpayer-funded thing from the get-go if they said, yeah, we need a UFO program, because then, the news is going to be like,
Get
we're
out
in
of
the middle
here.
of a pandemic, we are passing stimulus left and right, you want to fund a UFO program? What are you talking about? But now, the Senate can point to, hey, there are these things in our training ranges. Look, the director of national intelligence said so. 11 pilots almost crashed into these things. We absolutely should be spending money on this. And I think, especially in the world of defense, whatever it's going to be you're talking about jet research that costs, hundreds of billions of dollars. I can't imagine this is going to cost, more than a couple tens to hundreds of millions, which it sounds like a lot, but in the defense world is really not.
It's a drop in the bucket, really.
It's a drop in the bucket.
What is the Senate's motivation in being interested then?
National security.
Yeah,
right, but is that so they can build things to fight things, like more defense contracts?
No, I think.
Go ahead.
No.
I mean, it's all just a conjecture because no one's really, outright said it. But I have two opinions about it. One is if you have from a more cynical point of view in terms of just what's politically savvy, you have something that is putting service members in danger, potentially. And it's a really easy win to say, hey, I am here to support our people who are defending this country. And here are these people who are kind of becoming the victim of a really ridiculous bureaucracy that are maybe putting into danger. Let's do something about that. How is that not? That's also the good person thing to do, but also politically is, a pretty nice thing, especially if this topic turns out to be something really real. Then, Marco Rubio, Mark Warner get some major brownie points because they were ahead of the ball game there. And secondly, I think they're pissed off because based on the incursions that have been happening, these guys are part of the Gang of Eight, and the Gang of Eight is supposed to be briefed on all types of intelligence failures. It's legally required. They're the mechanism involved that's supposed to have oversight over the intelligence community. Armed services is supposed to have oversight over the DoD. And they find out about these incidents thanks to the New York Times, not thanks to the people who are supposed to be telling them.
And they're pissed about it.
So they're saying, why the hell am I finding out about this from the media? Where have you been? Why haven't you told me?
That's what Mellon said in one of his blog posts. He's like, how is it that the cream of the crop of our intelligence are getting better information and intel from George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and the New York Times? Like, he didn't call them out, but he's basically saying journalists are giving us the best info. Like, hello, there's a security hole here, and you need to fill it. And that's why I think it gets approved. And that's because here's the thing, and we talked about this last night. It's a loss for the president of the United States if he declines this, and they go, "Oh, really? You're gonna decline more safety in our airspace?
Right?
You're gonna decline more safety to our pilots who are almost hitting these things with their planes?" I mean, look at the president. Look at what he's doing. They want to make it. They want to make light of it and fun of it because it's a UAP, because we don't know what these things are, but they are there. They are real. And now you've got an interesting dichotomy between, the Department of Defense and the executive branch. It's going to be fun to watch. But going back to your original question, Michael, how much, right? The first program that lasted 5 years, it's not the first program, but I'm sure it's one of many. At least what we know is the program we know about, ATIP, 5 years, $22 million. So if we get $100 million per year, that would be infinitely more. And I think we'd gather way better, way more data. And I would hope it's somewhere in that range, the $100 million range. Because again, what Daniel said, $100 million per year is nothing in national defense. You cut one B-2 drone that they just made, one of these new B-252 drones or whatever the hell the name of it is. You cut two of those out of the budget, and you could fund this for 10 years.
What are your thoughts on John's point? He says we have an Air Force still, correct? Like, what? They secure the air. Like, why? That's a really good question. Like, why are we begging Congress and begging the president for more money? Don't we have an Air Force who should be looking into this and being like, hey, we have pilots running into shit. Why? What's going on?
I think
potentially
yeah. Well, I think this is why you got the IG though, right? Because the Air Force's policy is we've already given you our answer on this problem, and it was Project Blue Book and the Condon Report. So go suck on that. We don't want to hear about it. And in the meantime, this problem has come where these drones, we've talked about this a million times, this drone issue that we're on the precipice of, and they haven't accounted for it. They haven't made any countermeasures for it. They haven't built, like, F-16s are not built to outmaneuver little tiny drones. Like, they're just not. It takes a mile for an F-16 to make a turn, probably more than that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, I think the UAPTF report, they brought out enough that you can bring it to Congress and say what's going on here. But I do understand, like, this point here, like, they look at 25 million spent and say, great, we need more Ouija board studies and skinwalker crap for 100 million. Like, I get that argument, right? I get that argument. But now we have the UAPTF report that goes, okay, let's stop talking about aliens for a second. Let's stop talking about extraterrestrials for a second. Let's talk about the danger, and not even the threat narrative, just the danger of our pilots accidentally running into something like this. That's something to be aware of.
Threat narrative. That is a threat.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, even just because something
it's like a threat to safety.
Well, yes. I'm just saying it's not a direct threat of war. I'm trying to separate a direct threat of war versus a safety concern. Those are two different things.
Well, to be fair, though, the United States hasn't had a threat of war since the British. Like, there hasn't been an imminent threat to the United States. Maybe Japan came the closest.
Pearl Harbor, yeah.
I mean, but they turned around and went right back, and that was it was the biggest mistake ever. But I'm saying, like, we don't need that to start a war. Like, if one of these things hits a plane, that plane crashes into a freeway because it was in the middle of landing or something like that, people are going to start asking questions. It's a threat because it's a threat to the narrative. It's might not be like a war threat. I understand what you're saying, but it when behind closed doors, when they're talking about this at a senatorial state level, they're saying, listen, this is a threat. This is a problem. Because it's the only way that you get that budget passed. It's the only way you get the attention of the general. It's the only way that people go, oh, wait, what? It's a threat? We could get in trouble if something bad happens? Okay, let's take care of this before it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I think politically speaking, Manny was pretty much on the money. I think it was it Singularity Lab or UCR?
Oh, yesterday, Manny.
Yeah, I think it's really not going to sound good if Biden comes out and says, no, I don't think this is important, and I'm going to, disagree with the Deputy Secretary of Defense. I'm going to disagree with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. It's like you have to explain yourself if you're going to do that. And then when it comes to the budget requirements, I mean, you remember this thing was passed unanimously from the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. So certainly within that little pocket of the Senate, this is a bipartisan issue.
One of the few bills, if not the only bills, that was passed on a bipartisan level in 4 years.
Right.
Okay, just think about that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Guthrie.
That's okay. I mean, yeah, I think some of the time when you get people sweating the details on budgetary stuff, it's with partisan issues, like, what, we're going to be spending this much money on something that I don't care about or that I don't think is an issue, like and again, you've also got the fact that it's the national security topic or challenge, however they phrased it in the UAPTF report. I just think it's it looks pretty good, the possibility that we're going to get this through. And as for something like the Condon report, it's weird. Like, if you read a bit of Hynek, he basically said, look, you can't. The Condon report was essentially a straw man. They said, do we have evidence that these things are extraterrestrial spacecraft, and not, do we have evidence that there is a phenomenon that is unaccounted for by our current models? And so they arguably didn't find conclusive evidence that
it was aliens,
alien extraterrestrial spacecraft specifically, but they found plenty of stuff that
anomalous
makes you think, there's something to this. Like, I actually bookmarked a little section here. There's a case from Greenwich in 1956, and I might just read the abstract very quickly.
Yeah, go right ahead.
At least one UFO report was tracked by Air Force control, radar, ground control at 2 RAF stations, with apparently corresponding visual sightings of round, white, rapidly moving objects, which changed directions abruptly. Sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah.
Interception by RAF fighter aircraft was attempted. One aircraft was vectored to the UFO by GCA radar. And the pilot reported airborne radar contact and radar gun lock. The UFO appeared to circle around behind the aircraft and followed it in spite of the pilot's evasive maneuvers. Contact was broken when the aircraft returned to base low on fuel. The preponderance of evidence indicates the possibility of a genuine UFO in this case. The weather was particularly clear with good visibility. So, this thing was clocked traveling at 4,000 miles an hour, which is substantially more than the airspeed record at the time. And they go through this in the Condon report. Could this have been anomalous propagation? They draw a total blank with regard to this case. And it's not the only one, which is eyebrow raising. So, they had some evidence like this. And you can look at the Condon report and say, to be really generous to them, this is 1969. They didn't really have the kind of cheap sensor technology that we have today. Arguably, it is kind of impractical maybe in 1969 to do like the Galileo project in 1969. But today, I think you really can't make that argument so much. So even from like the most conservative point of view, there's a pretty solid argument that there's some anomalous stuff. We never really addressed it. And we have the technology now to take a look at this. And it's kind of overdue time that we did.
And it's fascinating that you bring up, and that was the Condon report, right? And this is kind of the straw man that you were talking about that they set up, and they said, look, we don't have any conclusive evidence that this is aliens, case close. And it's like, well, the absence of evidence doesn't mean it's evidence of absence, right? You can't just conclude that. You can't set up a straw man just to knock it down and then say, well, there's nothing to see here, because obviously, that what you just read, it sounds so much like what Fravor and Dietrich saw, and that was in the 60s. Like, how is this? There's just something so off about all of this. And
the other thing is you can't prove a negative. Like, if you don't find evidence of extraterrestrials, you could always say, if you're a believer, you can say, well, the aliens just knew that we were coming or something, and they circled around. Like, you get the same problem when you're dealing with religious topics. Whereas if you're doing it the way that Hynek suggested, is there a phenomenon here that we cannot explain using our current models? Then you can falsify that. You can say, well, look, here's all the data, and we can explain pretty well everything that we've been confronted with, and then you can kind of argue back and forth whether the explanations were really plausible or not. But that at least allows you to kind of get traction from a scientific point of view. But that wasn't really the way that the Condon report was set up, and so I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but that's one of the reasons that the Galileo project, I think, is important.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're going to have, just for those of you who don't know, we're going to have Avi back on the Big Phone Home. He's coming on day 2 of the Big Phone Home. That's Sunday, September 5th. Luis, dates of the Big Phone Home. Saturday the 4th, Sunday the 5th, Monday the 6th, Labor Day. Is that right? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Yep, 4th, 5th, and 6th of September. Labor Day weekend.
Fantastic.
So in true telethon form, will there be jugglers? And
do we have any jugglers?
Man,
Daniel, do you juggle?
Oh,
I do not. Anything athletic, really, you don't want to see me do it.
Fair enough. I could juggle, like, I think I've done 3, but it lasts for about 2 seconds, and then
just loop it.
Gone.
Yeah. They won't
just
know.
Loop it.
Just loop it. Yeah, it'll be.
I
just
can
like
do 3.
speed.
I can do 3.
Yeah, Michael, you're the guy.
I'll bust him out.
Well, I guess.
Could I just say one more thing about the Intelligence Authorization Act?
I think, absolutely.
Yeah, something that Daniel and I discussed a little bit is the language, how broad it is in that first section where they're talking about availability of data, and that kind of meshes in quite nicely with this. Something that I think a lot of us are quite excited about is the prospect of maybe having a look at anything that the Air Force, anything that the Navy, anything that the DoD or the intelligence community may have collected prior to 2019, certainly prior to 2004. And, you've got people like Manny saying, oh, well, we've already got fantastic imagery of these UAP. So it'd be really nice if we could get the UAPTF to look at that historical data. And the Intelligence Authorization Act is very openly worded. It says, basically give us any UAP related information that you have immediately, give it to the UAPTF. And the only question mark around this is someone that Daniel knows, I think, who's got some experience.
Douglas D. Johnson, I believe he is.
Douglas D. Johnson, that's right.
I believe so.
And he's got some legal experience.
He knows all of that stuff very well.
And he was under the impression that this Intelligence Authorization Act may only apply to events that have occurred since the date of enactment of the bill. So once the bill is finally, assuming it is signed, once it is finally signed, it may only apply to events that have occurred essentially going forward. And that would be, a real kick in the balls. Yeah.
But if we're getting, look, I think it's a nice compromise if we're getting a report every 180 days.
It's still great, but it would be like amazing if it is actually retrospective as well. And so
I don't understand. Like, I know that the UAPTF was very limited in funding. So their job was to, okay, let's look at the most recent, let's figure out what happened recently because we don't want to go down rabbit holes, right? Let's figure that. And then once they did that and reported that to Congress, now Congress should have the ability to ask them to, okay, let's keep looking forward. Let's put some, SOPs in place. Let's make sure we've got some standard operating procedures. We've got reporting coming in. Let's fix that. But let's also look back. Like, I don't see why they wouldn't want to. Do you think it's just a funding issue, or do you think they're afraid of being stonewalled? Like, well, why wouldn't they look back?
I mean, I think you get into such a sort of can of worms with this. It's like, if you can ask Ross about this tomorrow, but I think he's of the view that he's been told some pretty incredible things by some people in the intelligence community. And if what he's been told is correct, then who knows, maybe there's a very good reason that they want to limit the narrative to 2004 onwards, or or 2019 onwards. But yeah, it gets into that sort of question
of alive who would be implicated in something,
and exotic material related stuff as well. You can talk to Ross about that tomorrow, but yeah, I think it gets into that question of like, well, what's behind this? The interpretation, trying to read the tea leaves gets really difficult when you're not sure, how much of this is, Russian, Chinese drone swarms, or, US, plasma laser holograms. Stephen Greenstreet was talking about, or some sort of elaborate disinformation prank that the US is playing against China. Like, it seems nothing really adds up. Like,
right.
There's all these things that are still kind of on the table as far as I'm concerned, because we don't have enough kind of conclusive evidence to say it's definitely this or definitely that or that, or 5% of it is genuinely breakthrough technology. Like, it's and so then when you're trying to interpret, like, what does it mean that the Air Force's behavior and suddenly the involvement of the National Air and Space Intelligence Center? Like, I don't know, just there are too many possibilities trying to read the tea leaves for me at the moment.
I will mention that this is not the final draft of the IAA. And I was, before I got on here today, I was rereading some of the articles about this, and Brian Bender's most recent one where he talked about the Space Force really not wanting to take on this responsibility.
They're like, just because we got space in the name, bro, doesn't mean he's
exactly.
like the Tic Tac was like, a few meters off the ocean.
Exactly.
Get the Navy. It's the Navy's job. Get us out of here.
It's like having a flood in your house and the plumber going, talk to the roofer. he knows about water coming into the house.
Like, where did you see it? Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Right.
It's like, look, guys, we already got a Netflix show about us. We don't want to do UFOs. But I just want to read this really quick because I think it's two very important things. It says, a congressional staffer also told Politico that the classified portion of the bill, which we don't see, includes a provision outlining more parameters for tackling the subject over the longer term, including recommending additional funding to finance the effort. So it looks like there's a funding recommendation there. But what I really wanted to mention, because he's just about reading the tea leaves, says a former Pentagon official also said he expects there will be legislative guidance on UAPs in a final version of the National Defense Authorization Act. So we might have some more clarity as time goes on. I think those details, Guthrie, maybe they themselves are trying to iron out.
That's interesting.
Real quick, I just want to say this. So earlier in the chat, I put that I have some huge news for the Big Phone Home too. We just nailed down a really, really big guest, which might knock down the dominoes on some other really, really big guests. If you want to know who it is, let's see if we can get 60 people on the show. Share the show.
We had 60.
We had, I know, but I asked for 100 and we went down. So I gotta redo the standard. All right. Share the show, subscribe if you haven't already. This is a big guest, and I'm telling you, if I think this is gonna go the way I think it's gonna go, there are gonna be some really, really, really big guests, and it's gonna be a fun, interesting, I think especially third day of the Big Phone Home. The last day is shaping up to be absolutely epic. Of course, assuming that all of their schedules line up. Knock on wood. That's the next thing we got to hope for. But I'm telling you, you're going to want to hear who's coming.
Oh, we got one more. One more just popped in.
Just one more just popped in. We've only got 15 left to go. We can hit if I see 60 once. Absolutely spill the beans on this. We just lost it. 16 now. 16. You guys are going backwards.
I am really excited because I already know who you're talking about, and if and since that person committed, the dominoes should start falling. So it's pretty exciting. Until we get to those 60 guests, we got about 15 minutes left in this conversation, and I just want to see if there's anything else specifically, Guthrie, you wanted to talk about in regard to either that report or the condom report. Anything else that you're studying right now that you think is relevant, sort of to this topic and getting more data?
Well, I don't know. I think that I'm mostly been looking at the Intelligence Authorization Act. I think it's a good idea to potentially include questions about that in the push for the Big Phone Home, and see if anything can get included that we might want included. Like, for instance,
talk us through that. Like, what are we, because right now with the Big Phone Home, our number one objective is to get congressional hearings, not just because we think that congressional hearings will get to the truth, but we think that congressional hearings will instill this in the mind of the American people, bring it further less fringe, and allow us to push for more, put it in the zeitgeist, push for more information. But you had some thoughts as to what else we might think about when it comes to the Big Phone Home. You want to share that?
Well, I think, there's a couple of things. So Manny was mentioning yesterday that he thinks it would be a good idea to get some sort of a provision included that outlines a way in which some of this information can be declassified and brought to the public. So that would be one thing to hit home to your local representatives, your senators, to ask about. Another thing is this question of is this going to be retrospective or not? Are the historical cases going to be included or not? I think that's a fair question. And as far as a congressional hearing goes, yeah, I 100% agree. I think I've been I tried to set up a survey recently to see if I could get a lot of responses to the from the UAP community. I basically recycled a whole bunch of Chris Mellon's questions that he was wanting to pose to Congress to see if we can get an idea of what are the most important topics that people want to talk about, because I think that could help inform pressure on the sort of political class when it comes to the direction of a congressional hearing, potentially. And so, there's only about 40 people have responded so far, last I checked. And pretty much everybody wants to know more. 97% of the respondents, all but one, I think, said that they very strongly want the ongoing effort of the UAPTF to look into these claims of exotic material from Eric Davis and Louis Elizondo. So I think that's, from a purely objective point of view, you've got these people in positions of authority making these really extraordinary claims. Whether you think that, wow, this could really be alien, or whether you think this is outrageous. Who are these? How can people in positions of authority be saying such a ridiculous thing? Either way, it's a good idea to get these people to take the stand and say, okay, well, what's the story?
Excellent point. And that's something that we don't get. We were just talking about this the other day when we were watching Mirageman. Like, my mind was blown. I was very frustrated walking away from that documentary going, Jesus Christ, I can't trust anyone. Can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
Who am I supposed to trust? And so many people, it's secondhand knowledge too. And they're like, oh, that's already, that we've already agreed that that's the truth. And it's like, who agreed?
Right.
Who agreed?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, who agreed? I guess we all did, kind of, because it's happening.
I just mean, it's like, it's Dolan. Like Dolan says, the Wilson documents, that's old news. They're legit. And it's like, okay, am I just supposed to take your word for it? Is that how we're doing this?
Is that how we're doing this? Yeah. Well, that's.
And really, when it comes to, sorry, go ahead, Luke.
No. I was just saying, just the standard is can I take it to Congress?
Right.
Can I take this to Congress? And
will you take the stand?
Right. Will you take the stand on this story?
On what you're telling us?
Yeah.
And even an answer like "No, I won't" that would be informative,
Right.
Right. And the other thing is, asking people like maybe Robert Salas, and generally kind of learning more about the nuclear kind of angle. So that was one of the key areas of interest from that little survey, and another one was that pretty much everybody felt that, or the overwhelming majority of people felt that the UAPTF didn't have enough access to really do a comprehensive job. So I think those are the sorts of, if you can focus on a few things potentially and just really hammer people with those, how do we know that this is comprehensive? Like the bill that originally mandated or requested a UAPTF report asked for something comprehensive, and that's really not what we've been given. So to kind of just stick with that might be one pressure point.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like all of these things that you're kind of suggesting are bullet points, right?
Yeah.
So I would love this because, we've got on our website, we've got a section where you can make phone calls, right? And you can find your local or state representative, their phone number, you could give them a call. The chances are, especially over Labor Day weekend, and that you're going to get a voicemail of some kind. Right. So if we had a list of bullet points that people had right in front of them that could say, okay, we'd love congressional hearings. We would love, the report to be declassified. We would love information prior to 2020. All of these things that you just listed off, man. I would love if you put that in a bullet point format. We would love to put that on the site and use that as a template for people to call. Everybody's always asking, what can I do? What can I do for the big phone home? If I live in Australia, if I live in Europe, man, if you've got bullet points and you want to share them with us, that would be great. That's a great way to get involved. I'd be more than happy to have, if you want to, if you and Daniel want to get together and maybe help us out with that, that'd be killer. Yeah.
And I mean, also in the sort of refining of those bullet points, that's something that people can do. Like I originally put the survey together because I felt like after the UAP report, there was a bit of a lull in kind of the amount of news that was coming out and a bit of restless energy. And I thought, well, I feel like doing something, maybe a lot of other people do too. Maybe filling out a survey is something that we could do that's a little bit useful. So yeah, if I can write up the bullet points as they stand now and I can give them to you, but also
that'd be great.
Anyone who wants to can engage in kind of refining those and making sure that they're up to date and really reflect what people care about.
Yeah, well, what we could do is we could put it on, we could post it as a Twitter post, let people know, hey, is there anything that you'd like to add to this? Anything that you think needs to be reworded? Or if maybe not a post, but maybe we send it to the people, like John Greenwald will take a look at it if we sent it to him. Folks who could really, and I think you had mentioned an attorney, Daniel, earlier. I'd love to get in contact with that person and see what the legal aspect of these documents are and see if there's anything that maybe he would add to the formula on things that we should ask for or how we should ask for them. I'm trying to pull the best minds to write these things because I've never written a FOIA request. I don't have that verbiage in my catalog of things in how to write them in the proper format. So when I hear people who do, that's the folks I'm going to lean on to help us make sure that we cut to the bone with our requests, that they're concise, they're all saying the same things, they're all sort of in the same realm of what we're trying to accomplish. So that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can send some bullet points, what I've got, and then you guys can use them as you wish.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect. Awesome. Yeah, if you could send those, that'd be great. I want to thank Byron McDonald for his 20 loonie donation. I'm guessing. I think that's Canada. Canada.
Is it still a loonie? I mean, it was. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Byron, for that. I thought it was Bitcoin there for a second. I was getting super stoked.
I will say, please go to
Michael's
my
retiring.
show. Please go to my show and subscribe there. We've got a great show.
Byron's got the guts. So again, thank you, Byron, for that. I really appreciate it, Guthrie, because I think we can do a lot with that, right? So the more people we have coming together and kind of sorting out some of this higher level thinking and what we could do to start creating momentum and creating things that people can focus on individually. Like we talk about this a lot because we're going to be creating multiple different formats for the emails that people can send into Congress. We're going to be creating multiple different phone forms that people can use to call in. But the more information they have that kind of hits on the things that they can focus on that really resonate with them is going to make it that much meatier.
Well, and honestly, I think especially if you are calling it during the week and you get a hold of one of these interns, they would really way rather talk to you about UAP than most of the stuff that people call to yell at them about.
You're probably not wrong.
Yeah.
You're probably not wrong.
These poor, underpaid, overworked interns.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly a more fun conversation than most.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. We did get 50 back in the room, Luis. Are you sure you don't want to share with 50?
I'll give it a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Let's keep 50 in here to the end. 51. We only need 9 more and you get your announcement.
Just on Twitter. Did Alex Sears commit, by the way? Did you push him after?
I don't know if he committed to helping us write a template.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because yesterday we were talking about on the show, and then you told him to stick around after the show.
Yeah.
So you could bend his arm.
He committed to helping us. Yeah, Alex in. I don't know if Alec can be there. Some journalists are funny about it. Like Ross Coulthard got no problem coming and joining us for the big phone home. His journalistic he doesn't care anymore. You know why? Because his career is intact. He's not losing his job tomorrow when he talks about this. And I think some journalists have that hesitancy of, do I want to be associated with a political movement that has to do with UAPs? And how is that going to affect how people look at the way I write or when I'm writing, whether it's about UAP or not? So I can understand a trepidation, but I love the journalists that throw caution to the wind and don't mind having the conversation because they can intelligently talk about it. They're not afraid because you can talk about this intelligently without looking like an idiot. We do a pretty good job. I mean, we do look like idiots every now and then, but I think we do a decent job.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, ladies and gentlemen. We take the topic seriously, but not ourselves.
Exactly.
I know I agree with you. I also think that pushing the government for information, like that's what journalists do, right? Like that's all we're asking for. All we're asking for is for information and transparency from the government.
And all we're asking for is 7 more people in this stream. Just 7 more people.
And we've got a big announcement.
You make a good point, Michael. This is more than just a topic about, I think everyone hears UFOs and thinks aliens, but really what this topic is also about is it's a national security story. It's a freedom of information story. You take all that stuff away, just the way the Public Affairs Office, the Pentagon has handled this, it's a whole New Yorker article in itself, just in the way they're really living in the gray area with the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, if a journalist is turned off by it, I guess I get it, but also isn't this why you're here? Right? To apply that pressure?
There are ways of talking about it that are, not going to raise people's hackles in the mainstream media, people who, and in the public who really haven't thought about this before, and I think that's something worth keeping at the front of all of our minds is what is this topic from the perspective of someone who is completely new to this, and what are the stereotypes that they're going to immediately jump to, and how do I kind of counteract those? How can I be proactive about messaging?
Right.
Yeah.
Mike, I guess we're coming pretty close to the end of the show, right?
Yeah, we're about there. We're about to hit that wall. I mean, we can wait. Like, if y'all don't want to know who's going to be on the big phone,
I guess we could announce it on Twitter or our Patreon.
I guess so. Yeah, maybe Patreon.
Maybe Patreon wants to find out. Maybe they do want special access. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We're only 6 away, as I said.
I did share the stream.
There you go. There you
doing
go.
what I can.
I got the hashtag wrong.
Yeah.
I want to know what your accent was. Was that like an old nanny?
Who?
Luis, for a second, he was like,
yeah, a little bit.
Maybe we should bring Artemis on for the final poll. We need 6 more people in the room. We're ending the show in 3 minutes. Justin says 54. It's not our fault. We're here. I do gotta appreciate Justin and the 5D Raver and Anna Arena.
I promise you're getting the news, guys.
Twink McCloud.
At this point, I'm not gonna tease you that hard. You're gonna get the news. 52-60. Right. I'm gonna tell you anyway because I'm super excited to tell you anyway.
All right, so let's get this.
Let's do it after the poll.
Let's get the poll from Artemis, and then we'll hit you with the news, and then we're gonna be out.
Yeah.
All right. So Artemis. Oh, there she is.
Okay. Hello.
Let's move her over. All right, Artemis.
Hello.
We've got a new poll. Do you want to share what the new poll is?
Yes. So, which do you prefer? 23andMe, 23andUs. Oh, sorry. 23andMe, 23%. 23andUs.
Wait, what? Okay, so
wait. Hold on, I'm sorry.
What is the poll?
Oh God. Okay.
So
Oh God. Okay.
I think I messed her up right before she read the poll.
Okay.
We got like 50 Shades of Red. All right.
Okay, so what is the poll question?
Okay, so the poll question is, which do you prefer?
Which do you prefer? Got it.
Okay, the results are 23andMe, 20%. Okay. 23andUs, 0%.
Oh.
23andWe, 33%.
Okay.
Ooh.
And 23andWho, 47%.
I don't even understand. Luis, explain this poll to. I don't even understand it.
I think it's a great poll.
What does it mean?
I think.
You don't get it?
23andMe, 23andYou, 23andWho, or 23andUs?
I feel like there should have been an Eggman in there somewhere.
Yeah, this probably should have been an Eggman.
All right.
But yeah, that's the poll.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much, Artemis.
Which one won? Wait. Which one won? 23 and who?
23 and who?
23 and who? Because people always want to know who.
People don't trust that 23 and me, man.
They don't.
23 and who is a way better route to go if you want your genome read.
I got nothing.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for leaving me hanging there. I truly appreciate it.
Dude, I mean,
Swink McCloud enjoyed the poll. Okay.
All right. Well, at least Swink McCloud.
That's the best name in the whole chat. Okay, so
Swink McCloud.
I mean, that's a great name.
McCloud.
We also got James Andoli, which, by the way, James Andoli is
yes,
a really big part of why we have this guest. So I'll give a quick shout out to him. So guys, the big news is that we are guaranteed to have Daniel Sheehan join us for the Big Phone Home.
Wow.
Hopefully we'll get him on for day 3. And if Sheehan's in, I'm not going to say what guests I hope are the next dominoes to fall and folks that we get to join the effort. But Sheehan was a big piece to get. He represents a lot of interesting people, and we're hoping that those interesting people show up with him or, before him.
And again, big shout out and thank you to James Andoli from Engaging the Phenomenon. If you are not following James, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Check out Engaging the Phenomenon. He was the one who set us up with Daniel Sheehan and potentially the next dominoes to fall. You know who Sheehan's connected to, so we don't got to tell you.
Yep. May the floodgates open.
May the floodgates be open.
The floodgates be open. And this is just, again, Big Phone Home, September 4th, 5th, and 6th. It's a free event. You don't have to buy anything to be there. You don't have to, clearly we'd love for you to subscribe, ring the bell.
Please subscribe, like, and share.
Yeah, it's a great way to support the channel. But yeah, you guys, this is what all this hard work is leading up to. We're getting the guests that I think are going to bring new eyeballs to the conversation, because there's, I think there's a lot of people, and Danny Sheehan's told this story about Weinstein, where Sheehan showed up in one of his Twitter chats, and they were talking about Weinstein, and they were talking about UFOs. And Sheehan just started rattling off all of his UFO stuff because he's been representing people in the community for a long time. So I'm excited to bring a whole bunch of new eyeballs and people listening to this conversation in a different, unique and active way. You guys, this is all because of you, because of everybody out there and everybody in this room that helps us do the work. So
I didn't realize Sheehan was connected to Nixon's head in a jar, but
he's connected to a lot of things.
I did.
Is he also representing Nixon's head in a jar?
He's not at liberty to say. He's not at liberty to say.
Can't discuss ongoing.
Yeah, what a pleasure. What an amazing show. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Guthrie with his first appearance here. I hope it won't be the last. I hope you come back and see us very soon. Guthrie, it was amazing to have you. Daniel Miller, as always. Guthrie, if people want to follow you on Twitter, if they want to take your survey, if they want to check how they can support what you're doing, how might they find you?
So I'm just Guthrie Dice on Twitter, GUTHRIE DYCE. That's the best way to follow me, I think, publicly. Or Dice Guthrie, I think it is actually, is the Twitter handle.
Perfect.
But you could type it in and find that. And I'll make sure that the survey is pinned. At the moment, I have a Mr. Bean UFO meme. So that's fun. But
it's a tough one to unpin, though.
Yeah, I do.
It's hard.
It's very
might be
difficult
sad.
to unpin Mr. Beam UFO meme, but certain sacrifices must be made.
Yeah.
And I also put your Twitter handle in the chat as well for everybody to check out.
Yes, make sure you go follow Guthrie, and I hope you'll come back and see us soon, brother.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's great. It was great to have you. We appreciate what you're doing. Daniel Miller, if you are if you're a producer in LA, you need a beautiful mug. You need a beautiful mug to act on your new production. He's right there.
I'm here.
He's right there.
I'm available. This isn't desperate at all.
Wait, did we mention what sort of films we were talking about? What kind of production?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Speaking of,
I know, right? At this point, it doesn't matter.
it's totally liquid in this mug. Yum.
If anybody's looking
look how
for,
good you look,
Hey,
That's some acting right there.
When's Father's Day or Mother's Day or something? We need to.
Those are
We're in
both
that
past.
holiday
So
season.
happy.
Wow.
Yeah, we missed those.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Back to school?
If you need a UCR coffee mug to send your children back to school with.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's true. You
got
totally need it in their dorm, actually.
Those mugs are sexy.
They are.
They are.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
The
Thank-
kids
Good
are into the
conversation starters.
retro.
Check out my
Hot
Linktree.
merch.
Shopify shop is
Right.
in there.
It's super retro. Kids are into the retro. Send your child back to college with a UCR mug.
And t-shirt. Why not?
What the fuck is
Yeah.
that?
Make a backpack too.
What's happening?
Do we have any
I don't know.
backpacks?
No, we should though.
Gotta work on that.
Yeah,
Some
they're
UCR.
available.
It's an idea.
I didn't like the embroidery on the backpacks. That's why I didn't go with it.
Some
Right.
laptop sleeves. There you go.
Mm.
Oh, there you go. That's a
Oh.
great idea.
Laptop
Good idea.
koozies.
Laptop koozies. actually, beer koozies would actually be perfect.
Ooh, yeah.
It'd be
We don't have
good.
any beer koozies yet, so we'll get there, ladies
get
and
on
gentlemen. Daniel Miller, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for bringing us your incredibly in-depth research. We really appreciate it. It means the world to us here
Always
at
a pleasure.
Singularity Lab.
Good seeing you guys.
Good
Later,
to see
buddy.
you. Later, brother. Artemis Prime. If you're not following this lovely woman on Instagram and Twitter, you're psychotic. That's all there is to it.
For sure.
Please make sure that you support this lovely person who's been supporting this show for such a long time. So it's such a great pleasure to have you, Artemis, and thank you for
Thank you.
sharing our
That's
poll
so
results.
nice.
We appreciate it.
Of course. Anytime.
And
All
by
right.
the way, I'm putting Artemis's Twitter handle in the chat. Later, Artemis.
Woo,
Word.
thanks,
Thanks, Artemis. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, the Christian. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was truly a pleasure to be with you. For those of you in the chat who are still here, just hanging out, just because
Watching
you're
you
awesome.
being blinded by the light.
Watching Kristen be blinded by the light. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, if you didn't know, now you know, Ross Coulthart is going to be with us tomorrow. So make sure you do not miss that episode. On Thursday back here, we're going to be talking to David Marceau. He is an ex-military, or I shouldn't say ex-military. He's a veteran. And he had a pretty extraordinary UAP sighting while he was in the service. So make sure you come back and join us for that. And at the second hour on Tuesday, we're going to be reviewing
Thursday?
Planet of the Humans. What's that?
On Tuesday or Thursday?
Thursday. Did I say
okay.
Tuesday?
You said Tuesday.
Thursday. we'll be talking to David Marceau, and we'll be reviewing Planet of the Humans. So if you haven't seen that, it's on YouTube. It's free. Planet of the Humans. Google it, and we'll see you then. And then Friday on UCR,
We got Dave Beatty, and
Dave
we
Beatty.
got Christian Thompson from UAPDB coming on.
Fantastic.
The show. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Fantastic. Well, you guys are all amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Stefan, thank you. 5D Raver, Jean-Francois Charlebois,
Charlebois.
Don't forget.
a human called Dave. Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that. I'm getting better.
Actually, I take
thank
that
you so
back.
much, Tina Tomaszewski.
Jean-Francois Charlebois is the best name in the chat.
It is the best
I'll
name
take
of
that
that.
back.
Jean-Francois. It's not Francois. It's
Francois.
Francois.
Francois
Sadia makes it
Charlebois.
an S sound.
The what makes
I
it an
think
S
it's
sound?
Yeah, I
The
can't
thing
remember.
that
I
makes
don't
it
even
look
remember.
like
my
an
friend. Anyway,
S.
the little squiggly makes it an S sound.
Got it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Peace.